I like to think of riding like a pie, with the pie being broken into pieces, each one delineated by one of the phrases that we've all heard so many times in riding arenas. So perhaps our beginning piece here should be the piece that everybody knows about riding, which is heels down. And along with that piece, I would say, goes the idea of stretch your leg down. And along with that, we've got the upper body doing its opposite thing of grow tall. And I think the grow tall idea is often associated with stick your chest out. So by now, I'm sure you're getting the idea of where I'm coming from here and some of the other phrases that we could add into this pie. So another one might well be sit deep. How about use your back? Here's another one, which I think gets said rather often. We could just say more leg. I think that one normally has a few exclamation marks coming after it. We could also add push. So some of these it's more apparent what they mean, some of these it's less apparent what they mean. So for instance, use your back is a set of words that could be interpreted in many, many different ways, and push also could. And yet it's also true that these words will at some point in time have been some elite riders' discovery about riding, which they said to their student, who said it to their student, who said it to their student, who said it to their student. And many years and generations down the line, somebody said it to you. It's like a massive game of what we in England would call Chinese whispers, and I think you folks in America call telephone. And the question is whether your interpretation when you hear these words is anything remotely like the feeling the originator actually intended to convey. And actually one of my favourites in that regard is the notion of push. Nobody's actually stupid enough, or perhaps one should say smart enough, to put their hand up in a riding arena and go, excuse me, what do you push with and how do you push with it? And that was one of the questions that I started out here when I started really realising how fuzzy this language is. What bit of your leg? How? What's it actually supposed to do? So we could add more things to this. We could add keep your hands still. So that one, at least it's easy to know what it means. It's not so easy to do it. And then maybe we get to the last big piece, which should have maybe a bigger segment than I've given it here, about getting the horse on the bit. And of course, that's one of those phrases that could be interpreted in many, many different ways, and regularly is. So we have all these phrases, many of which are very, very fuzzy language. In fact, one of my heroes is Columbo. Some of you remember Columbo from the American detective series, and Columbo kind of used to go, well, I'm so stupid, I don't understand how you could have been here at 7 o'clock and there at 9 o'clock. And he solved the case by being so stupid. And in a way, I've gone, well, I'm so stupid, I just don't understand what I'm supposed to push with, and I'm so stupid, I don't understand how I should sit deep or use my back. And thinking about this and studying over 30 years what it is that changes riders and their experiences on horses, and what it is that elite riders are doing that they quite possibly don't know they're doing, has led me to realise that the ply could be split up in many different ways. If these pie pieces really were the fundamental organising principles of skilled riding, I think there would be many more skilled riders than there actually are. because the reality is most people get stuck on a plateau at a skill level that I think is way, way lower than their skill level could be. And they're trying to do all these things, giving it their best shot as they best can, and getting as far as they get them. So it could be that we could split the pie into some completely different pieces, which I think are what elite riders are actually doing, even though they might not describe their skill in these words and they don't know they're doing it. But they are, despite that, the pieces that are really making it work. And our aim in this is to say these pieces in language that makes them way more reproducible with a lot less slippage. So our first piece, which is one I think I'm associated with a fair bit, is the idea of alignment and of a shoulder to hip to heel vertical line. Now that's not new. That's actually in our old tenets of riding, although mostly people give lip service to this and don't really do it. I think it's really important. And what it does is it lines the rider up on the horse in a way that if the horse went out from under her by magic, she'd land on her feet. She is essentially in a martial arts posture. It has always made very little sense to me that there's nothing within our traditional pie pieces that defines what length the rider's stirrup should be. And in every other skill you look at, angles are incredibly important. The biomechanical analysis of folks who run or high jump or ski or whatever else, angles are really important. And I would say that the thigh should be at 45 degrees, which is halfway between horizontal and vertical, although elite riders can work well with their thigh at 40 degrees, which will be slightly more vertical than most people need when they're starting off. Okay. Along with this, another of our pie pieces is that the foot should be light in the stirrup. Now that's a real surprise to most people because stretch your leg down, push your heel down really implies there should be a lot of weight in the stirrup. But the foot should just rest and not press, because when you push down you will get an equal and opposite push up. It's Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Your push down straightens your joints and sends you up. We also think it's really important that the rider gets to sit still. So I think a modern day interpretation of push has a lot of people shoving with their backside, moving themselves about in the saddle, and that notion of still we call plugging in. So plug in is a bit like the idea of those little plastic cowboys and Indians where the little cowboy would have had two little doodahs coming out of his seat bones that just plugged into two little holes in the horse's back. And there's a connection that's made which involves the horse and the rider really still, almost like the rider was a carousel pole that grew out of the horse. So along with all of this, we could talk about the rider supporting her own body weight. So some riders sit like a sack of potatoes, some riders look like they're so perched they're barely there on the horse. But along with this alignment, we're looking for supporting your own body weight. We use the idea of if the rider was hung in a harness, if some kind of harness under your pelvis could support you from the sides of your pelvis here and the front of your pelvis here, and you were hung in that harness, you would take much more responsibility for your own body weight and be much less just surrendering it to the horse. Okay, so along with this, a big piece, the way riders access core strength. So I call this bearing down, and along with the ability to do that, we have to have you breathing at the same time. So a very big piece in my way of looking at the pie would be what we might call bear down and breathe. So whilst perhaps a modern day interpretation of the pie might have something in it about core strength, it still doesn't have a lot that tells riders how to generate core strength. Whereas we have this way of teaching it, and it starts off with doing what you do when you clear your throat. So if you go and clear your throat, doing that starts to access core strength in the way good riders do. But there's a bit of an art form to doing that the whole time. the rider has to get her body up there where she can stay with the horse. And it's kind of like if the horse is going along going trot, 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 forces are acting on the rider's body, and the rider has to be able to go with it, with it, with it, with it, to ride along without pulling back. And a huge part of the skill is being able to match the forces. This is a piece that people recognise when they see it in an elite rider, but don't really realise what's happening in that elite rider's body to make it possible. And part of what makes it possible is the tonal quality within her muscles. So if your body is like jello, you're going to be much more wibbly wobbly, and along with that wibbly wobbliness, you're going to get tempted to pull on the reins. In fact, you'll probably inevitably pull on the reins. So I'm going to put something here that is called tonal quality, and it's about the quality in the muscles. And the last bit I'm going to add here is a bit that's a little harder to explain to you, but it's a concept we call narrowness. So it's about whether your body can almost kind of pick up the horse underneath you, between your thighs and under your butt, or whether you're so wide that you can't get hold of it and the horse almost like whooshes through between your legs. So this is a little harder to explain, but we have ways to teach it. And all of these pie pieces can be delineated, can be taught, and can be taught with much less slippage than things like sit deep, push, use your back, which mean whatever they meant to the person who first said them and whatever they might mean to you. But they are a fuzzy use of language, as opposed to precise pieces that we have here. So our plan within the Ride With Your Mind Biomechanics portal is to deliver to you some little videos and off-horse exercises that focus in on these pieces and begin to show you how to do them, at least giving you pieces that you can practice to start heading you in the right direction, even if you can't get one-to-one with a coach and really get to understand them in depth. We can certainly give you an inroad in the right direction. And if you sign up with us here and you go along with this, I think I can show you how to begin to turn your body into the kind of body that will get the results you would like to get from your horse. So whether you feel as though you're ineffective on your horse, or whether you feel you're in conflict with your horse and throwing your weight around in the wrong way, everybody knows that they want to be able to push their hand forward, they want to be able to be influential, they want to be able to look classical while they're doing it. And those skills, whilst we might sum them up and say that's what talented riders do, we can break down into learnable pieces and bite-sized chunks and stack those chunks together in a way that riding skills become learnable. And I'm testing the hypothesis here that I think that's really possible long distance. And I hope you're going to join me in this endeavour.